Hi, I'm Hema Ramanathan, a teacher educator, an author, a scribbler, now a podcaster. As someone said, a pedagogical polymath. Welcome to the Hema Zone, where I discuss a wide range of topics related to the arts, movies, books, education. Every third Wednesday, I'll weave a narrative, share my ideas with a scintillating guest for a sparkling chat. This week, and in this segment, I'm very pleased to welcome Nandini Vijayaraghavan. She's a prolific author of both fiction and non-fiction. Would you like to tell us what you've written so far? Give us a list.
I straddle two genres of literature. I translate Tamil novels to English. I've translated Kalki Krishnamurthy's Shivakamiyin Sabadam as Shivakami's Vow, Parthiban Kanavu as Parthiban's Dream, and Savi's Washingtonil Thirumanam as A Wedding in Washington. I also write business books, and my first business book was co-authored with one of Bloomberg's journalists, Umesh Desai. It was Singapore's first corporate biography titled The Singapore Blue Chips. And I have also authored two India-focused business books. The first was titled Unfinished Business, Evolving Capitalism in the World's Largest Democracy. And the second book, which is likely to be published in the second half of 2025, is The Rare Fortune, Investing the Rakesh Jhunjhunwala Way.
Thank you. We just wanted a list of what you've done because that's impressive. But what I really want to discuss today is not even your translations, definitely not your non-fiction. I want to talk about the illustrations in Washingtonil Thirumanam. Well, A Wedding in Washington. Tell us about the background to that.
So, Tamil literature has this rich history of illustrated works, be it Ponniyin Selvan, Parthiban Kanavu, Shivakamiyin Sabadam, Thillana Mohanambal. All these books were illustrated by iconic artists, and a particular artist is very dear to me, Gopulu. That was because he could illustrate historical fiction like Parthiban Kanavu, social fiction like Thillana Mohanambal, and a humor novella like Washingtonil Thirumanam. So he once again, he was a master at multiple genres. And it was my good fortune that I met him. He was over 90 then, a few months before his demise, and he was healthy, active and cheerful. And I had the pleasure of meeting him on 2 days, and he very graciously allowed me to use his illustrations both for Parthiban Kanavu and...
Yeah, but why did you want to use his illustrations for Washingtonil Thirumanam?
I believe that translators struggle to replicate the impact the original novel had. And if translators were allowed to incorporate the original illustrations, the readers would get a sense of the original, much more. So, which is why I think it's important for translations to include the illustrations.
Does that mean that translations which don't include original illustrations lose something by it?
Speaking for myself personally, I was delighted that Parthiban Kanavu had the illustrations, whereas the 4-volume Shivakamiyin Sabadam's translation, Shivakami's Vow, did not. So I won't say it loses impact, but it's just a different feeling.
But Wedding in Washington, it's a farce, it's a satire. It has elements of a farce and it's definitely satirical. What did you find about the illustrations that would speak to people now? Because it was published 1963.
Right. So
So
exactly.
we are talking 60 years later.
Right. So I mean, you hit the nail on its head. So for the translation of a humor novel to appeal to a wider audience, the translation was very helpful. It gave people an idea of how urban Tamilians dressed at that era, in that era, how urban Americans dressed in that era, and what was their body language like. What were the different kinds of jewelry being described in the novel? What is the different kinds of food which is being described in that novel? So it almost facilitated the reader to visually imagine the novel as they read the translation.
We talked about what illustrations you really liked best, and you picked 4 of them. We'll show the illustrations, but tell us about what this illustration shows.
Okay, this illustration appears in chapter 2 of A Wedding in Washington, and it shows the first contingent, the bride side of the family arriving in Washington. And then the picture can be broadly, you see 2 sections to the picture. One is the Indian contingent disembarking from the plane, and this illustration sets the tone for the rest of the novel. So you see there is this complete happiness and joy which one ought to feel when there's a wedding underway, and there is mirth, but there is no mockery. And this sets the tone for the rest of the novel.
Mirth is an interesting word to use because it's a very dated word. I don't know too many people now who would understand it, let alone use it. When you look at this cartoon, it's almost cartoonish.
Right.
And you think about cartoons that you see now. Do you find this kind of illustration being used in novels today, or in
No, as you said, it is dated. This is a period social novel. So this is very typical of that time, and it transports readers back in time, to the 1960s, and it sets the tone for the rest of the novel.
Okay, what did you find really made you laugh? Made you giggle?
Expressions of the various characters. So, for example, this illustration where Ammanji Vadiyar and Sambashiva Shastrigar are washing clothes on the Potomac River, and then there's this congregation of Americans on the banks of the Potomac River, and a dog, and even the dog, much like the Amul topicals, has a very surprised look to it. What is going on? And the same acceptance, they are curious, they are amused, and the dog is surprised. And why I'm citing the dog is because the dogs are an important character a few chapters later when the Narikuravas land, and the American in the US, and the American dogs,
and they don't bark.
They don't bark. So so probably Indian dogs barked at the Narikuravas because we humans had somehow shared our prejudices about the Narikuravas to the dogs, so they barked. And whereas the Americans were completely ignorant about them, and so the dogs also accepted them. But look at that dog's expression; it is curious. But there is no hostility. It doesn't look like a dog which is about to bark.
Or bite. Okay. This one is probably more topical even now, because when you look at a lot of foreigners, non-Indians who come here are still looking for gold, for jewellery. I think the craze for saris has gone down. So, why this?
Yeah, just before this illustration appears, there is this dialogue in which one of the characters, I forget who, says the instant goldsmiths start making jewelry, our women will not budge a centimeter from that site. They will be glued to the place where the goldsmiths are making jewelry. And this kind, to me, shows the universality of human character. There are a bunch of American women too, who are glued, looking at to the site, looking at the goings on and trying on jewelry. And Savi does remark that they place their jewelry inappropriately. Like, for example, a odiyanam or the golden belt, a woman tries it on as a tiara. And then there is this kasamala, which another woman is trying it on as a belt around her waist. But then
Ample waist.
Ample waist. So, but who said that the odiyanam should be worn around the waist or the kasimale around the neck? I mean, we now talk of jewelry being more versatile. You have pendants which become neti chutis, and it's all about it. And to me, Gopulu foresaw that. And he was a man illustrating, but just as in Tilana Mohanambal, he got the mudras of Mohanambal right in his various illustrations. This shows the versatility. He foresaw the versatility of jewelry, and there's something common in human character, something as appealing as jewelry. And for men, due to generations of conditioning, I suppose it would be cars. If something that is appealing, is being made, your nationality is immaterial, you'll be drawn to it.
What I find interesting too in all the illustrations is you don't see anything that really reflects American life, except for the women, for the people,
right,
and their caricatures for the most part.
Right.
But like you find representations of Indian life, it's almost as though Savi wrote to do that, but even in the illustrations, Gopulu didn't expand that, that horizon to include anything American. So you look at the illustrations here, you get no idea, honestly speaking, of what American life was in those days. How is that usually done with illustrators?
I mean, could you elaborate?
In a sense, illustrators draw, people who draw, artists, painters, are supposed to have an eye for universality. Gopulu doesn't show that here. He shows his view and sight lines seem to be very restricted.
Well, in certain illustrations, you do see certain monuments of Washington D.C. appear in the background. Okay, but we should also remember that both Gopulu and Savi had not visited the US. They had not seen Washington D.C. This was the pre-digital era. So they were doing it completely out of imagination. And to Gopulu's credit, in certain illustrations, he shows certain Washington monuments in the backdrop, and B, especially the newspaper headlines, of which there are pictures, they're exactly like the headlines of those times. So that he replicates. So he might not have done it through through characters, but the environment, he certainly brings it across in the
A lot of the cultural environment that you have, the social environment, the Americanism doesn't get reflected in it. This is the illustrations in the book are very Indian. So you put them in a novel that is set in India, you wouldn't really have to change very much.
Yeah, except for those for the mix of Indian and American characters.
But when you talk about them coming here and they're visiting here, the wedding could have, as far as the illustrations are concerned, the wedding could have happened in India just as well, for the most part.
I did not have the foresight to ask Gopulu about it, so whether it was intentional or unintentional, but my guess is that this was primarily for a Tamil readership. So the American characters in the various illustrations there were Washington monuments which appear in certain others, and most importantly, the newspaper headlines are give readers a smattering of what life in the US was like. In fact, now that we talk about it, I remember one elderly lady, my friend's neighbor. She read, the PDF version before it was published, and the first thing she said was, when she saw me, "I'm so happy you had the Venezuelan warrior with his sword up, that statue, and an uplam stuck at the top of it. That made my day." So there are instances, but probably it doesn't strike you because the major 12 illustrations which appear are all very Indian, but the newspaper headline images and certain monuments do bring the American feel to the novel.
When you if Gopulu hadn't given his permission for you to use it, would you have continued with the translation and publishing it?
I would have had beta readers to give me feedback. I wouldn't have gone in with the same confidence as I did. It was only my son, Siddharth, who was my first beta reader, and he had never seen a traditional Iyer wedding, but he was laughing his head off, and he was 2011, so he was 10 years old. And I said, if this novel in English can amuse a 10-year-old so much, then it's worth looking at. I was fortunate Gopulu gave me permission, but if he didn't, I would have had a large number of beta readers to give me their opinion before going to the publisher.
So as far as you're concerned, the translation too, not just the serialized original, needed the illustrations.
Translating humor is either courageousness or foolishness. However, that depends on how favorably you're inclined towards me. So it is a leap of faith, and it is these illustrations which helped me in making that leap of faith.
One last question. Tell me about the cover illustration and how you chose that.
Well, I should thank Ratna Books, Netra Sham for choosing that, because mine was the fourth illustration which we haven't discussed, the Nalangu, because I thought this was a wedding in Washington, and so the bride and groom actually are cameo characters in this novel. The novel is about everyone else but the bride and groom, so let the cover at least have the bride and groom to give the image of a wedding. But when Netra always does this, like in Parthiban Kanavu, she chose white, grey, lavender, mauve for the cover of the novel, the translation. And mentally I had all these earth colors, red, green, gold, to appear, because it was a historical novel, and Netra's choice worked. Similarly, when Netra chose the parties drawing the columns and the Americans observing it with wonder, in the color scheme it did. I said, Netra, you're the boss. This was.
What other comments have you had about the illustrations?
Needless to say, several people have thanked me, saying if we buy the Tamil books, the illustrations are no longer there, or not all the illustrations are there. You've taken care to include every single illustration, especially the newspaper headlines, the Venezuelan warrior. There's one with Mr. Hobbs, his dhoti, panchakacham coming off, and a page boy holding it. All that, it just shows, and what is really surprising is I find people in their 20s coming to me and saying, my mother spoke about Mr. Hobbs wearing a dhoti, the Venezuelan warrior. My grandmother spoke about the Janavasam picture spread across 4 pages, and you've replicated all of that painstakingly. So in a certain sense, I must say that the illustrations have stolen the thunder from the translation, but I'm grateful that they did, And if this book serves as a document of the master illustrator's works, and he very graciously allowed me to use his illustrations for not one but two novels. This is my very limited Guru Dakshina to him, and I'm very grateful and happy about that.
We tend to forget how visual people are. When we talk about novels, we always talk about the words in the novels. We talk about the dialogue, we talk about does that word sit right or does that word not. But I hope when people read the novel and you pick up the book, pick it up for the lovely evocative sketches. And I'm not denying the writing in any way, not Savi's and not yours. But I think the illustrations are unusual and very unusual in a translated work. And in that sense, they retain the flavor of the original, which doesn't always happen with translations, because the translations hew very closely in language to the original, but not necessarily in manner of presentation to the original. So those were really good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hema.
Thank you for listening to me today and my guest Nandini Vijayaraghavan. Share this podcast. Follow me on THZ on Instagram. Catch me at Facebook at the Hema Zone. And I'll be back with more compelling stories from writers, from authors, from musicians, filmmakers, artists and artistes. Scribble a note with suggestions on my webpage, thehemazone.com. Check back on the third Wednesday next month for another engaging speaker. We'll connect with people who spin stories for us to see the world differently. Thank you.